Right now, we are going to take a look at condos and have a bit of a conversation overview, specifically from the mindset of a first time home buyer, which makes the majority of condo purchasers. We're going to take a deep dive into the ins and outs and what you should be thinking about if you're thinking about buying a condo in Toronto. And we have none other back for a second conversation, Reuben Labovitz at Fox Marin, a broker at Fox Marin, here to talk to us about condos. Reuben, so glad to have you here.
Happy to chat about condos, Ralph.
All day long and all night long. Okay, let's get into it. Let's talk about status certificates. What is a
Yeah.
status certificate?
So a status certificate is think of it as a financial snapshot into the health of the condo corporation. And it's really important when you are considering a condo to understand that it is not like owning a home. You are purchasing a unit, you own your unit in that building. However, you're also a member of that condo corporation. And so it's incredibly important to ensure that the condo corporation and the condo building is being run functionally, that the finances are in order and up to date. And that is essentially what a status certificate is. And when you're thinking about it, okay, well, how do we know? How do we get this document? Usually there are two ways that is gone about. Some sellers will have the status certificate ready for a buyer to review. Right off the bat, you can have a lawyer review it. You must have a lawyer review it. And you could do that in advance of an offer going in if you wanted to make your offer more desirable, perhaps. Or, especially in today's market, it's more common that a status certificate is not being provided off the bat because the condo market is slower right now. Status certificates are only valid for 30 days. So most sellers are waiting until they have an offer in hand to order that status certificate. And if that's the case, you must have a condition of status certificate review in your offer to give your lawyer a chance to review it. Never, ever, ever submit an offer on a condo either without having the status certificate reviewed by a lawyer beforehand or without having a condition of status certificate review.
Awesome. And what are a couple things that could pop up in a status certificate that could be very detrimental to moving forward with a purchase on a condo?
There are a few things. Actually, there are a lot of items. The biggest one, or one of the bigger ones, is the reserve fund, and that tells us how much money the condo has in reserve for anticipated repairs and just the ongoing functionality of the condo building. There's no right number as to how much there needs to be. It's not like you can say proportionally per unit, there should be X amount of dollars. What your lawyer will do when they are reviewing that reserve fund, they're comparing how much is in the reserve fund to what is projected as being anticipated in the reserve fund study. And that's an incredibly important comparison. And taking that reserve fund study, seeing if the building has the funds that are anticipated to be needed for that fiscal year. And if not, well, then there could be a problem. We would want to understand, how does the building plan on making up for those lost costs? Will there be a significant increase in maintenance fees? Will there be a special assessment? Special assessments are another important item to look out for. Or on some occasions, buildings have a surplus, and that's great. It's very, very uncommon for buildings to reduce their maintenance fees. But if they have a surplus, they can tuck it away. And that likely means the next year, you're probably not going to have an increase or a much more minor one than you may have in previous years.
Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I mean, I mentioned a special assessment there. Special assessments, very important to consider. And that is, okay, if that money is not in the reserve fund and there is usually an unanticipated repair, how is the building going to pay for it? And usually that is either by a significant increase in maintenance fees the following year, or what's called a special assessment, which is a one-time, or if it's a large amount of money, if it's broken down into segments, fees that is just levied on the unit owners proportionate to the size of their unit, similar to maintenance fees. That, again, you're buying into a condo corporation. This is not like owning a freehold property. If the condo corp says you have a special assessment, you are required to pay that special assessment. So we want to make sure that there are no special assessments, or if there are, they're not always terrible thing. Sometimes there are minor ones that will actually prevent a future increase in maintenance fees that you might think of, you know what, this isn't so bad if I have to pay a couple $100 for kitchen stack cleanouts that wasn't projected because there's more wear and tear on the building. But you want to understand if there are any special assessments, why there are or why there have been in the past, and then make an educated decision as to, okay, am I comfortable knowing this? Am I comfortable moving forward with the purchase of this property?
Okay, very, very helpful. Let's talk about the most talked about, or one of the most talked about topics when it comes
Hmm.
to condos are the dreaded maintenance fees. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I think people don't take into consideration, because you'll hear a lot of consumers, a lot of buyers, a lot of homeowners talk about maintenance fees and be like, well, I would never want to pay maintenance fees. One of the things that's always important to point out is if you own a 100-year-old home, you're paying maintenance fees. You're just paying them in very large swaths. And oftentimes you're the one that has to deal with the issues. So when the furnace breaks on December 24th and you have no heat in your home, you're responsible for figuring that out. And generally, you're going to be paying a lot to get that back up and running or even replaced. Same thing with roofs and floodings and all the other things that go along with home ownership. So there are costs, and there is no such thing as owning real estate in Toronto, residential real estate, that is maintenance free. So owning real estate will always have a cost to maintain. And the question is more specifically when it comes to condos is there value for what you're paying your maintenance fees? And are they in line with market realities? Or are you paying an excessive amount? And that's one of the things to be very cognizant of. So Reuben, in the city of Toronto currently, what would you
Yeah.
say the average price on a per square foot basis range is for maintenance fees today?
Ralph, we're inching up on a dollar.
I know.
If we were having this conversation 5 or 6 years ago, it would be about 75 cents a square
Yep.
foot. And now, for whatever reasons, I mean, I've had conversations, I can speculate. Now, I would say across the board, if a property has maintenance fees around $1 a square foot, that's pretty much in line with what you would expect. Now, you mentioned, okay, well, what's included in those fees? That will vary from building to building. A lot of older buildings are inclusive of utilities. And so that could be a savings of to $200 per month if you're not paying your water and your heat and electricity. Most newer buildings do not include utilities. Some will sneak in a mandatory internet fee, which I don't really see the value in because internet is so affordable these days, but those are out there. It's just important to consider, okay, what's included in those fees? Are we at $1.20, $1.30 a square foot? That might scare me off today in some buildings, or we would just have to very much take that into account from a price perspective, a purchase price perspective. And Ralph, as you mentioned, I mean, yeah, you don't have the roof that can go, a flood that could happen, your furnace that could break down. Obviously, that could happen in a condo building, but a portion of your fees, a pretty large portion of your fees on a monthly basis that you're paying, some of it goes to just the general operation of the building, the cleaners, the service contracts, etc. But a large chunk of that, and we just talked about the reserve fund, goes towards that fund to ensure that when things pop up, the building has the ability to act quickly and make those necessary repairs.
Yes. So maintenance fees are a necessary evil when it comes to
Yeah.
owning real estate as a first time buyer. So, something to prepare yourself for. It's just understanding what those costs could be in a freehold house based on its current condition, and then also the variables, and then trying to get a handle if you're looking at a condo, what the current costs are, and then trying to extrapolate the future costs based on the age of the building and how it's being run and what you uncover in the status certificate, because maintenance fees costs as they go up, especially if they start to go up at a quicker rate than current market, could start to impact the resale value of your condo. So always a lot to consider when it comes to maintenance fees, but definitely it is a necessary evil. One of the things I want to move into, Reuben, is good buildings, good developers, buildings with good reputations versus the ones that don't have the best reputations may not be performing well, and into the future may continue to outperform. And there are so many instances where people call us and they're like, yeah, we'd like you to list our condo. And I'm like, where did you buy? And they tell us, and we're like, oh my gosh, like who let you buy there? Why did you buy there? And I'm sorry, but we can't really represent you in the sale of this because it may be unsellable, or you will be selling it for significantly less than what the market would have you think your property would be worth. So Reuben, let's talk about buildings and how they differ from one another. What are the characteristics, and what type of advice you would give a client looking to buy a condo?
Yeah, I mean, without just getting on here and talking poorly about specific buildings, there are definitely characteristics and I'll say stigmas that a lot of buildings or some buildings in the city have. I'd say off the bat, really important that you focus on reputable developers. There are developers that have a history of major flooding in their buildings, or developers that went bankrupt shortly after a building was completed. And neither of those are great signs in my books. Then it's also okay, really the experience of our team and a first-time buyer, they would have no way of knowing this if they're just starting out on their search. But everybody in our team has been through hundreds of buildings in the downtown core and around the city, and just knowing, okay, this building has thinner walls than others. This
We
management
we
company has not.
we've put clients on rentals in this building, and they've
Yeah,
all left within a year because they've had a lot of issues with sound, for example.
yeah. And rentals are a fantastic way to learn a building. And if it doesn't work out from a rental perspective, okay, you can leave after a year, but do I want to be putting my money there long term? No, because I would be worried about how the quality of the building, how it was run, would I be able to sell my property down the line? And so I would just say to any buyers out there, if there are buildings that you are considering, or if you want to know more about buildings that you should try and avoid, we're not going to blast them out on this segment here, but reach out. You can have a conversation about that to ensure that you are only looking in buildings that are well built by reputable developers that have not been stigmatized, and that we would be comfortable recommending that you could put your money into.
There was a very cheap builder, and I will mention them here, UrbanCorp, and they went bankrupt a number of years ago, and their buildings are very stigmatized. There's a nickname, Urban Crap, for any building that they built in their time while they existed as a developer. So that's one, just as
After a certain period of time, some
yes,
of their earlier buildings are
yes,
actually totally fine,
yes. But there's a
but you have
specific
to
vintage. Yeah.
understand the yes.
There's a specific vintage of urban core buildings, which we would highly recommend that you stay away from.
Yes.
Okay, and then one other topic I want to get into here is let's talk about investor buildings versus end user buildings, how we can get a sense and how we know the difference of the two and why that matters long term for resale values, and also just experientially what it's like to live in an end user building versus an investor building.
Yeah, this one very much depends on where you would
Yes.
like to focus your search and also the age of the building. Traditionally, the older the building, the more end users there will be. Investors have maybe they were in there originally, but if we can make a generalization, they would have moved out at a certain point in time and more end users would have taken over. If we're looking at most buildings built in the downtown core over the past 10 years, I'm going to generalize that at least 50% of those units are investor units. If we were to look at buildings that have just come online over the past 2 or 3 years, that number is closer to 90 or 95%. And how do we know that? Well, sure, again, it's our firsthand experience, but in the STAB certificate, it will tell us exactly how many units have been registered with management as a rental property versus an owner-occupied property. And I would also say that that number is usually a little bit low. Not everybody registers their rentals with management. And so where do I want to live? Is there an upside to a investor building versus an owner-occupied building? In my experience, investor buildings with majority tenants don't take care of the properties of the common spaces, the hallways, elevators, amenities nearly as well as an owner would because, well, they don't have any skin in the game. They pay their rent, they use the facilities, and eventually they just move out and move on, and there are no consequences to how they treat the property. Whereas if you're looking in a building that is specifically end user, everybody who is in there, I'm personally in a 86 unit building that is probably 90% end users, and everybody cares. Like, people take care, they clean up after themselves, they look out for each other and the property because they're invested in the community, and they also want to make sure that their money is going into the right places and they don't have to spend excessively down the line because something wasn't done properly. And so there is a really big difference. It's important to note, and I said it earlier, if you are looking downtown, you're probably going to end up in a building with at least 50% tenants, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world, but it's just important to note how that might affect value down the line if there's more maintenance required, if the property isn't as well taken care of as you would hope to. Theoretically, in my opinion, those properties might not appreciate at the same rate as an end user focused building would.
Awesome. Reuben, any last words for a first time buyer considering buying a condo?
Do your homework, make sure you're purchasing in a good building, make sure you have a good lawyer who is representing you and reviewing the status certificate. And I guess last thing to throw out there is things happen. You can't control everything. We can do as much due diligence as possible, and owning property comes with risk and you're not always in control. So make sure to also set aside a little bit to cover anything that might pop up that may be unexpected.
Awesome. Reuben, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate the conversation.
Thanks, Ralph.